أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام را تلك آيات الكتاب المبين إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
There are 29 verses or 29 chapters in the Holy Quran, or around that number, maybe 30, maybe 28, that starts with those broken letters or the singular letters like Alif Lam Ra, like Ham Mim Ain Sin Qaf Alif Lam Mim, and so forth. And the fact that those start the chapters of the Holy Quran has caused scholars to have disagreements among themselves. When you find what the scholars say about the wisdom or the purpose of having those broken letters in the Holy Quran, they give you multiple reasons. Many of them, we're just going to be pointing toward those that we consider important. For example, they say that if you start with a letter of any verse or any chapter, it means the name of that chapter. For example, Qaf. Surah Qaf starts with Qaf. Or Surah Hamim starts with Hamim. Some other scholars say no, those are all names for the Holy Quran. Therefore, God will give it different names. Sometimes give it as a book, sometimes as a constitution, sometimes as a Quran, and sometimes in these letters. Some other scholars say those are mutashabih. Mutashabih means figurative, meaning something that we cannot really pinpoint its true meaning. It is something that is beyond our comprehension. Therefore, we should not waste our time. We should not even think about them. Let's go to the full sentences. Those are just, abbreviations in the beginning of the Quran. But many of the scholars say, although those are abbreviations and people cannot understand them in full, but those are considered to be kind of codes. Have you seen the codes that governments use sometimes, or the companies use that only the employees understand? This is also a code. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decoded His information, has coded His information and the wisdom and knowledge in these letters. Now the Prophet receives those letters, he decodes those letters, and then he informs his followers and his companions, his people, about the true information of these letters. So it is not everyone would understand it. Those are all coded words, coded wisdoms, coded knowledge that God is talking directly to His Prophet. Now the Prophet translates those words into, for example, fiqh, like jurisprudence, like some ethical laws, stories, noble stories, any sorts of information. He elaborates later on in a detailed, simplified way. But in one letter, maybe you can put, hundreds of thousands of information. The megabits now they use in the computers, for example, those little chips. How much this chip take information? A lot. Hundreds of thousands of words you can, put pieces of information you can put in this tiny little chip. So God, the chip of Quran is those letters that, start the Quran with. This is correct, brothers and sisters. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes when He talks to His Prophet or the messengers, He speaks with them in a coded way. There is an elegant hadith by Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. He says that when you recite Quran, sometimes you get certain information of it. But other people, due to their knowledge, they get more information of it. Rather, those who are at altitude, at higher altitude, like awliya, they even get more. And when you compare them to prophets, the prophets even get more of that. He says that كتاب الله على أربعة أشياء. Number one, على العبارة والإشارة واللطائف والحقائق. It says that if you look at the book of God, you can, distribute it into 4 different categories. The first category that is considered to be phrases. The phrases when I and you and the rest of people read the ayah, what do we understand from this ayah? That is a phrase that the general public understand from it. But then there is ishara. Ishara is a signal. And that signal is only toward the awliya, those who have really special status, the VIP of God. Those are the ones who understand differently. When I recite an ayah, I understand, due to my shallow thinking, I only have certain ability or certain information of it. But the awliya, the waliyullah, when he recites the ayah, he understands, in much deeper way and extract more information out of that. And then he says, وَاللَّطَائِف. Lata'if are for the awliya. Sorry, isharat was for khawas. It says that you have a special category. Those are called specialized. And then you have lata'if for the awliya. And then you have haqa'iq for the prophets. The prophets have the true meaning of those holy verses. When the prophet recite the Quran, obviously he will understand from it and extract knowledge from it that we, the ordinary people, cannot understand. Those are all encoded information. There is a narration by Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He says that on the last moment of the prophet, while he was alive, he called upon Ali ibn Abi Talib. Then he whispered in the ear of Ali. Afterward, they asked Ali ibn Abi Talib, what did the Prophet do to you? What did he whisper in your ears? He said that, عَلَّمَنِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ أَلْفَ بَابٍ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. The Prophet, in these few minutes, has taught me 1,000 different kind of knowledge. يُفْتَحُ لِي مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ أَلْفُ بَابٍ. From each one, each different category of this knowledge, he opens 1,000 doors. Meaning 1 million kind of information and different type of knowledge the Prophet, peace be upon him, has given Ali ibn Abi Talib. How does he give him? It has to be in the coded way. So those are considered to be in coded way. Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has another elegant hadith. He says that when you ask us and we answer all the questions, we know all the questions that you ask us. We know about the earth, we know about the heavens, we know about the entire universe. There is nothing that is hidden from us. But how do we understand it? We understand it from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, إِنِّي لَأَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَمَا فِي النَّارِ. He says that I know everything. Whatever goes on the face of this planet, whatever goes on in the heavens, whatever goes on in the hellfire, I know about that. Then he says, do you know how I know this? They say, how? He said, أَعْلَمُهُ مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. Just by reciting the Holy Quran. From this Holy Quran, I understand the true meaning and all of those information. Then he recites this. It says that God tells the Prophet, he says that, وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. That God tells the Prophet that I have descended Quran for you, I revealed Quran for you, which is an expressive for everything. It's an expression for everything. You cannot see anything that is not, stated in the Holy Quran. Don't we recite the ayah in Salat al-Ghufayla? Who says the ayah, وَعِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وما تسقط من ورقة ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. That everything has been included in the book, but when we recite the Quran, we don't understand this. How is it possible? It's due to those, coded words. Therefore, the interpretation of Quran, brothers and sisters, should be left to the knowledgeable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Our knowledge is relative. You know, we have only certain ability to discern Quran, to understand Quran. Therefore, in order to get the full knowledge and understand the Quran in its fullest, or something that is, that benefit us, we have to go always back to the Ma'soom. Unfortunately, you see many of those self-declared scholars who consider themselves scholars of Quran and Hadith, they're the ones who translate Quran based on their understanding. And that's, a troubling sign. One day, one sister told me, the same way that you read Quran and understand it, I also read Quran and I understand it. This is the way that we understand Quran, just by recitation. Yes, there is one way to understand Quran through this, but the true meaning is not just by recitation. It is just like the student who goes to the university, a medical student who is given an encyclopedia of books, textbooks, so heavy, so expensive, to read. By reading, can he understand? Obviously not. He always need what? The professor, the instructor to come and explain things for him. Why? Why can't he read it? Isn't it in English? It's in plain English. All terminology, he can go and check the Webster dictionary and find out about each single terminology. Yet he still needs a teacher to explain, the words in this encyclopedia, in the text, for example, the biochemistry, the physiology, the medical, all kind of medical books, all needed to be explained by the instructor, by the professor. The same thing with Quran. When I read it, I understand certain level, but in order to reach the reality, I have to have someone to explain it in fullest. And who is the one who is capable? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يمس إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون. It's in a book that is heavily guarded. Heavily guarded. في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. You have to be cleansed in order to understand the meaning of Quran. Now, who are those who are مطهرون? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another ayah, إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. Abu Muhammad, should we make one salawat? But there are some people who, translate it based on their willing, on their desire, whatever they hear from this guy or that guy, they translate it and explain it. For example, when it comes to Qaf, they say that Qaf is a mountain at the end of this planet. Now, where is the end of this planet? At that time, they thought that the planet is just a rectangular thing. You just keep moving until you reach the end of the planet. They say that this mountain is by which that is holding our planet. Now, this mountain is located on a horn of a bull, and the bull is on the whale, and the whale in the sea. Now, sometimes the bull wants to jiggle his head a little bit. As he does, then we start to feel the earthquake. This is one of the greatest scholars. Muslim scholars come to say such kind of, absurd, translation of Quran. Or he says that if you check those verses or those chapters that start with the letter, for example, Qaf or Hamim, go look, you see the letter Qaf has been repeated so many times. These are not our own task to explain. Always go back to the Ma'soom, see what the Ma'soom say. In one incident, Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam met one of those translators of Quran, the interpreters of Quran. He was a scholar. His name was Qatada. Qatada used to live in Basra. One day he moved to Medina, and the Imam alayhi salam saw him, told him, Ya Qatada, do you do the tafsir, the interpretation of Quran? He said, yes. People asked me to do. He says that, how do you interpret it? Based on your own judgment? Based on your review? If you do this one, فَقَدْ ضَلَلْتَ وَأَضْلَلْتَ. If you do this one, then you are misguided and you will misguide others. Then he said, وَإِن فَسَّرْتَهُ بِتَفْسِيرِ الرِّجَالِ فَقَدْ أَضَلَلْتَ وَأَضْلَلْتَ. If you say it, if you translate it just by narrations, you have heard it from this guy and that guy, again, you have misled people. Only one certain group who knows it. يَا قَتَادَ لَا يَعْرِفُ الْقُرْآنِ إِلَّا مَنْ خُوطِبَ بِهِ. The one who understands Quran is the one that God has talked to through Quran. Who is that? It was the Prophet and his progeny. There is a joke, just to break your silence and your sleep. They said that one of those scholars who would translate Quran bit by bit, then he got to this ayah, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Then he thought, he said, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي, what is وَمَا تَوْفِيقِ? Then he said, oh, okay, وَمَاتُ, matu meaning, okay, they died. But what is fiqi? So he was searching for the word fiqi. Of course he was, a non-Arab translator. So these kind of things should be left to the Imam. And here's the ayah comes to stress that those letters that you see, alif, lam, ra, those are all coded words, only the specialized, only the one with experience, the one who is an infallible, that's the person who understands them in their fullest. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Sorry to break my promises. The other group of scholars, they say that those letters signify one important reality about Quran. Quran is considered to be the miracle of the Prophet. Therefore, these letters, the broken letters, they signify the miraculous nature of Quran. How? First of all, we have this great book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is considered to be a miracle. By the way, a while ago, an agnostic wrote a piece of article, a newspaper. He says that when I look at the monotheistic religions, I always feel toward Islam, that this religion is the one that is more authentic. Why? He says, when I go back and check, for example, Judaism, and go and ask them, okay, who's your prophet? They say, our prophet is Moses. Every prophet was, equipped with miracles. So when I tell them, what was the miracle of Prophet Moses? They say his miracle was the stick, the rod that he had. This rod would change to serpent sometimes. Sometimes he can cleave the water of the Red Sea. Sometimes he can cleave the ground and make water springs gush from the ground, and so forth. Those are the miracles of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. But he says, when I ask them, do you have anything tangible about it now? Can you see this miracle? They say, no, this is all belonged to 6,000 years ago. When I go to Christianity, the same thing. I asked them, what is the miracle of Jesus? He said he would resurrect the dead. He would rise the dead. They will all become alive. He would heal the sick. He would heal the blind. All of those, miracles that he would do. And that's true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasized this in the Holy Quran, says, إِنِّي أَخْلُقُ لَكُمْ مِنَ الطِّينِ كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ. I bring clay, pieces of clay, and this will be changing to a flying bird. Those were all miracles of Jesus. But when I ask them, do you see the miracles of Jesus now? They say no. Those are all back to 2,000 years ago. But when I ask Muslims, what is the miracle of your prophet? They go to their shelves, they put their Quran, and they tell me this is the Quran. This is the miracle of our prophet. Therefore, it is this religion that always continues to be, alive, to survive the challenges due to the fact of the Quran. Now, maybe someone would say, okay, the Christians also have Bibles. The Jews also have the Old Testament. So what is about that? But if you go and ask them, you told them this is completely Word of God, they say no, it is not completely Word. Even the Christians themselves, they tell you Bible is a collection of stories, some of it from God, some of it from people. So by nature it is not a miracle, but Quran is considered to be miracle. Now why those letters are considered to be, the sign for the miraculous nature of Quran? You see, brothers and sisters, when you look at, again, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, his miracle was the stick. This stick would change to, to a great python, serpent, whatever you want to name it, that would put other people to challenge. Why God has chosen this kind of miracle? There are plenty of miracles. But why God specifically has chosen this for Musa? Because the scholars say that at that time, sorcery and magicians were widespread. Everyone was a magician. Therefore, this kind of phenomenon existed on everywhere, was very widespread, was rampant everywhere. Therefore, God wanted to challenge them, challenge the magicians, challenge those people who come and show, and intrigue people by their own techniques. That's why God has created this serpent, to come to put them in challenge. When Moses alayhi salam used this in front of the magicians, what did they do? They all went to prostration. They said, فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سَاجِدِينَ قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. They didn't even say we believed in Musa. They said we believed in Lord of Musa. Because they know that this job is not of Musa himself. Rather, it's from someone greater than Musa. It is his Lord. Therefore, they accepted this. So God has challenged something that was very strong. Always, when you want to challenge someone, this is a technique, brothers and sisters. Keep it in your mind. If you want to challenge someone, go after the strong point. Look what kind of a strong point he has. Challenge him on that. Do not challenge him on a weak point. On a weak point, everybody knows that this is a weak point. His weakness is this. People will tolerate this. But when he brags about something and he considers himself good at that thing, go and challenge him on that thing. Therefore, to separate him, to break him apart. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did. When at the time magicians were all famous and strong, God challenged them with the stick. The same thing with Isa. During the time of Jesus Christ, medicine, especially through Greek doctors and Greek wisdom, was very well spread. Those that are called alchemists and hakim and so forth. Those were well known with their technique to heal people. God has challenged them with the miracle of Jesus. It's to heal people, to resurrect the dead. Now when you go to Muslims, when you go to Quran, you see that Quran brought where? In a barren land. The Bedouins, the Arabs, they were backward. They didn't have anything to brag about. No culture, no advanced technology, no architecture, no nothing except one thing. And that was their eloquency. Their verbal talk. Their poetry was, elegant. Therefore, God has challenged them on this fact. Telling them, oh, you people, you are so eloquent. You speak well. Your poetry is very well known. They had the 7 hanging mu'allaqat that are called the 7 hanging poetries on the wall of Kaaba to challenge anyone can bring as good as those. God told them, here it is. You have used your language, your eloquency with the same letters that I am using. Quran is made of what? Made of from alphabet. Alif, Lam, Mim, Ra, Kaf, Qaf. You are the ones who are using those letters. But can you bring something as good as Quran? Here is my challenge. The element is the same. You use the same language. You use the same letter. But can you produce something as good as Quran? Here is the challenge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put them to test on. It says that, أَمْ يَقُولُونَ افْتَرَاهُ. Oh, tell the Prophet, tell them. They say that you have made it up. Okay, if you have made it up, then قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ. If you can, then bring 5 chapters, 10 chapters similar to it. If you think that you can make it, then go ahead and make it. This is from the same letters that you use. If you look at your poetry, you see your poetry all composed from the same letters that Quran, is made of. Take those elements and bring something, as good as Quran, but you cannot. It is impossible. So here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses those letters, says Alif, Lam, Ra, meaning those are the simple letters. You can use it anywhere in your language, in your writings, in your poetry, but you cannot produce something as strong as Quran. There is an interesting story, beautiful story. There used to be a warrior, his name was Amr ibn Ma'di Karb. This guy became Muslim. First of all, he was a poet, and at the same time he was a warrior. He was a tribal leader from Yemen. This guy became Muslim during the second Khalifa, during the time of the second Khalifa. He joined the Muslim army. Now, this guy was a warrior, and he was very well known with his, techniques in the battle and ability to destroy the foe. Now, the sword that he has, very famous, it was very famous sword that he used to call a samsam. When he enters the battlefield with a samsam, no one could stand him. Everyone would escape, run away. So one day, Umar ibn al-Khattab told him, give me this samsam, let me see what kind of sword is this. Amr ibn Ma'di Karb took the sword and gave it to him, said this is it. The second Khalifa grabbed the sword, moved it a little bit, this way, that way, hit this rock, that rock. So there is nothing special in this. He started to ridicule this man, said, what is so special about this? You're saying a samsam and a samsam. I hit the rock and nothing happened. He told him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I gave you the sword, but I didn't give you the arm. You need the arm. It is not every arm can cut the rock. It is my arm that can do the job, not the sword itself. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the same thing. This man, Umar ibn al-Khattab, used him in the battles. In the battle of Yarmouk, when the Muslims went and liberated Persia, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas was the commander. He wrote to Umar ibn al-Khattab that I need more soldiers. Umar ibn al-Khattab sent this guy. When he sent him, he wrote a letter. He said that I am equipping you with 1,000 soldiers. Meaning that Amr ibn Ma'di Karb was equal to 1,000 soldiers. So this man is telling the Khalifa, it is not the sword. It is rather my arm that can make the difference. The same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is not the letters. The letters are just Arabic letters, alphabet. There is nothing special about them. But the great thing is the composition, is when you put all those letters into neat order, in an organized fashion that give you the ayat. Tilka ayatul kitab al-mubin. This great book is all made from those simple letters. And here is the miraculous nature due to eloquency of Quran. Quran is so eloquent. This is one aspect. One aspect of the miraculous nature of Quran is the eloquency of Quran. But is there any other form? Yes, absolutely. You see, brothers and sisters, when you look at Quran, you see it's made from different, verses and chapters, and sometimes those verses are also repeated many times. When you look at the concepts, the ideas, you see different ideas. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about regulations, about ahkam. Do this, don't do this. Sometimes talks about, ethical rules, the good behavior, the bad behavior. Sometimes talk about the story of the prophets, what the prophet used to do, the tales of antiquities. Sometimes it gives you different kind of information. Sometimes talks about the nature. Sometimes talks about the law of physics. Sometimes talks about chemistry. But in general, you cannot say that this book is book of physics or this book is book of chemistry. But in total, it's a guide for Muslim to correct and regulate its relationship with his Lord and with the society. This is Quran. That's why we call it is the constitution. What does a constitution mean? It means that it regulates my relationship with God, with my Lord, and with people. That is also considered to be, a miraculous thing. When you look at Quran, Quran was descended to people who were nomads in the middle of desert. They had no clue about, some sophisticated things. For example, in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَرْسَلْنَا الرِّيَاحَ لَوَاقِحَ. We have sent the winds as fertilizers. Someone who lives in Mecca, who have not seen a tree to start with, how can he understand what is the fertilization nature of the wind? What does a fertilizing wind does? Something beyond his comprehension. Why? Because he has not had any trouble with this. He never had faced such kind of issue of fertilization. But who recognizes this fact is someone who lives where? In a, somewhere like Halifax, for example, full of a tree and forest and flowers and those things. That person get to appreciate this one. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent Quran, yes, it was for it was revealed to people of Mecca, but in fact, it was for the entire humanity. Later on, after so many years, centuries after, the scientists came to recognize that it is the wind that causes fertilization between palms, between the trees. This is one aspect. I'll give you another example. God talks about the steps in which human being get formed in the womb of his mother. The pharmacology is called, or morphogenesis. Does it mean morphogenesis? Anyway, there is this step where the human being that gets all shaped up in the in the womb of his mother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة. Keeps talking. It says that first we made him, out of an extract of a clay. Then it turned to be a seed, tiny little seed. Then we placed this seed as a drop of a sperm that changed to a clot, and then from clot it became a lump, and then from lump became a flesh, and then from flesh became the bone, and so forth. How did Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could tell those? Did he have a microscope to find out? Did he have an active lab, a science lab that he would go and do all this analysis and give this information to his people 1400 years ago, who had no clue, no idea how a human is getting formed in the womb of his mother? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elegantly here present this fact. This is another source of the miraculous nature of Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, within these tiny words and letters, we compose a book that is considered to be miracle for centuries, everlasting, never ends. This is the Quran. Then the ayah says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We have made this book, get descended in an Arabic language. Why Arabic? Sometimes many people, I remember back a few years ago, in California, somebody objected. He said, why do we have to recite, Arabic? What is the wisdom of reciting Arabic? Couldn't we just say the Quran in our own language? Yes, you can pronounce Quran in your language. Read the translation. There is no problem with that. No wrong with that. Actually, you can do that. But to reach the thawab and to reach the true meaning of Quran, the beauty of Quran, it should be recited in Arabic. Why? Because Arabic, when you consider it with other languages, it's a full language. Language that it has all the tools in it. You can express yourself in any way you want in Arabic. It's a very detailed language that even Arabs themselves cannot keep up with the rules. It has a huge rule, for everything. Any word, it has present, past, future. It has the proverb. It can be changed to double, to single, to plural, to male, to female. A tiny little word. You can change and use it in any way you want. It's an expressive language. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used this tool in order to express Quran, to find the elegance of Quran. For example, in one ayah it says, وَعِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ. What does it mean, وَعِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ? Now you want to translate it to English. How do you say وَعِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ? He has the knowledge of hour. What does it mean, an hour? How can we express hour here? But you see, the eloquency of a sa'a gives you a very deep meaning. That it is not this hour that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. It's talking about that important hour. The minute that we face our Lord. It's the day of Qiyamah, or the time that we die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elegantly but simply represented with this word, as-sa'a. But if you translate it to English and you write it in the book, you say, and he has the knowledge of the hour. It becomes meaningless. It loses its luster. The beauty is gone. Then people will say, well, what kind of, miracle is this? But Arabic is the tool by which the beauty of Quran is shown. This is one meaning. The other scholars say that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Arabi, and it doesn't mean Arabic language. We have two words, Arabi and A'jami. Arabi, anything that is expressive. When you express yourself and it becomes clear, it is called Arabi or A'rab. Rather, on the other side, when it's something vague and it's incomprehensible, you cannot comprehend it, you say it A'jami. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put it in an expressive language. Then the ayah says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. This is the beauty, brothers and sisters. God would say, so you become rational, you gain your sanity. All the purpose of Quran is not that we sit down and just recite it and read it. Articulation and reading and memorization by itself is not the objective of brothers and sisters. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, who used to kill thousands upon thousands of innocent people, of followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he knew the entire Quran. He could memorize the entire Quran. But did that help him? There is a hadith from Prophet, peace be upon him, says, رُبَّتَالٍ لِلْقُرْآنِ وَالْقُرْآنُ يَلْعَنُ. There are people who recite Quran very eloquently. Their voice is so beautiful, serene voice, but Quran curses them. Why? Because we just took it, as a beautiful portrait, as something that is traditional. We only kiss it and go underneath when we leave the home. Or we put it on the Sufrat al-Aqid when we have, Aqid and getting ready for wedding. Or when we have a Fatiha, we recite Quran. You see, God forbid, if you go to, for example, to our homeland, and all of a sudden you hear Quran is getting recited from a home. What do you say? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Who died? As if only we recite it when someone dies. This is called, Al-Quran says that, the Prophet says that, Al-Quran yal'anu. Because we're not taking any benefit from this. Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was martyred last night, he says that, Allah fil Quran. لا يسبقكم بالعمل به غيركم. Make sure that others don't adopt this Quran. It is you who adopt it. It is you who use it as a constitution. When you say constitution, what does it mean? It means that you act upon it. It means that you make it, you open it, and you follow the instructions of it. At that time, you have upheld the Quran. At that time, it means that you have been, respected Quran. Here is a hadith from Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and I finish inshallah. It says that one man came to him, when you recite Quran, make sure that you understand what you're reciting. He says that أولا, somebody asked him, what does it mean الَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ? When you recite the best kind of tilawah, what does it mean best kind of tilawah? The Imam alayhi salam, it says that أَلَّا يَنْثُرُهُ نَثْرَ الْبَقْرِ. It's not like a spell bean. Have you seen the beans when they spell? How you recite Quran very fast, that you don't even understand what you do. It says, أَنْ لَا يَنْثُرَهُ نَثْرَ الْبَقْرِ وَلَا يَهُدُّهُ هَذَّ الشَّعْرِ. And shouldn't recite it in a way as if he's reciting a poetry, because it's not a poetry. And here's the important thing. This is applied to every one of us. وَلَا يَكُنْ هَمُّكَ آخِرُ السُّورَةِ. Have you seen us? We say, which chapter are you today? Did you finish chapter 30? No, I'm still in chapter 28. The other one, no, I'm still in chapter... Always looking, when you recite, go move 3 pages. Okay, I have 3 more pages. وَلَا يَكُنْ هَمُّكَ آخِرُ السُّورَةِ. Recite it to understand it. Don't recite it to complete it, to finish it. What's the point? It's just like a parrot just reciting something that we don't understand, just to finish it. This is not the wisdom of Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't send Quran that we only keep, recitation without understanding. When you recite it, understand what you taught. He said to the Imam alayhi salam, told him, ما تقول أن أختم القرآن أكثر من مرة في هذا الشهر. Should I finish Quran more than once? The Imam alayhi salam told him, no, finish it once, but make sure when you recite it, you understand the meaning of it. You know what you are talking about. You know the words of God. At that time, you get, familiar with the words. At that time, you start to enact the words. This is what Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, in his beautiful sermon, he talks about those muttaqeen. He says that فَأَمَّا اللَّيْلِ صَافُونَ أَقْدَامَهُمْ تَالِينَ لِأَجْزَاءِ الْقُرْآنِ. Those people who want to recite Quran, they go in the middle of night. While they are standing up, doing their prayers, they recite the Holy Quran, يُرَتِّلُونَهُ تَرْتِيلًا. Not only by recitation, يُحْزِنُونَ بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They change their souls with it. وَيَسْتَثِيرُونَ بِهِ دَوَاءَ دَاءَهُمْ. If there is any sickness they have, they find the healing in the words of Quran. Why? By going through Quran, when it talks about an ayah that has punishment, they picture the ayah. They picture the source of punishment. They put the example of punishment in their eyes. The same thing when they read about heaven and the rewards that they receive. They enact the whole thing. They animate the Quran. This is how you get to understand the Quran. Until last night, the home of Ali ibn Abi Talib was enlightened with the verses that Ali ibn Abi Talib used to do. But tonight, all those recitation has came to an end. Every night, people, the neighbors, would wake up on the recitation of Ali ibn Abi Talib, either for dua, or for Quran, or for adhan, but all has come to a stop tonight, brothers and sisters. No more they have ever heard about Ali ibn Abi Talib. It is narrated that when the children of Ali, the sons of Ali, went and buried their father, on their return when they were coming back, they found an old man sitting in a ruin and crying and wailing and moaning. Hassan went to him, and Imam al-Hassan went to him and told him, Ya Abdullah, what is wrong with you? He said that I am hungry for 3 nights. For 3 days I did not anything and I am paralyzed. I don't have anything to eat. He said, how did you survive? He said that every night I would see a noble man that I could not see his face. He is masked. He would come to me and feed me, gives me food, gives me drink. He said, did you ask about his name? He said, no. Whenever I would ask him, he said, my name is Abdullah. Don't care about my name. But he used to recite ayat. He would recite Quran. But one thing that I would notice, when he recited the ayat of Quran, I would see the walls, I would see the stones recite the Quran with him. The echo of his voice would go everywhere. I would see everything would worship Allah with him. He said, do you know who is that? He said, no. He said, that is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abdullah lakal ajr. That man is gone. He's no longer alive. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات. إنك مجيب الدعوات. إنك قاضي الحاجات. إنك على كل شيء قدير. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.